Hey everybody, we are officially live. I'm so excited for our second mentor workshop of the spring semester. Thank you all for being here. We're going to get started in about 3 minutes. If you are watching the recording of this workshop, you can fast forward by about 3 minutes. If you are here live, introduce yourself in the comment section. I'd love to see who is here. We're going to get started, like I said, in about 3 minutes. So thank you all for being here. So excited to get started. We've got a lot to cover. We've got some good things to discuss with you all this evening in terms of our mentor workshop and just ways that you could go about building deeper bonds, how you could go about broadening your mentee's perspective and helping them find accountability, not necessarily holding them accountable, but helping them hold themselves accountable. I'm going to provide some tactics and suggested questions to help you go about achieving that. So we're gonna get started in about 2 minutes. Excited for you all to be here. Please introduce yourself. Please, introduce yourself in the comment section if you're watching live. All righty. Like I said, we're gonna get started here in about 2 minutes. We're gonna talk about some fun topics into your mentoring relationship. By the way, I recognize we are in a fascinating time period in our society with the coronavirus. This is truly a very, very interesting, unlike any other time in human society in like 100 years. So this is fascinating. So in my personal opinion, my personal perspective, the times of greatest discomfort, the times of greatest difficulty always lead to the greatest opportunities for growth. It is very difficult right now, but it will get better. It has to. I mean, as a human race, we are resilient. We will get through things. We will make things better. But it's a difficult time that allows us to be grateful for the times that are great. And just because we are all going remote, we're all working from home, we can still be building ourselves up. We can still be participating in mentoring relationships. We can still be doing training virtually via video call like we're doing right now. Or even phone call, but video call is obviously way better because you can see each other. So I don't know about you, but I crave human interaction. I think this mentor program is a great outlet to connect with another person, help them as they pursue their career. Because right now with this coronavirus situation, your mentee could be going through some very interesting, fascinating points of time with their job search, with their career search. I mean, they may have had internships that may not actually exist anymore. And helping them work through that, you're not necessarily their coach, but helping them ask questions to think about certain ways that they can go about accomplishing some of their goals or overcoming some of their obstacles. That is how you could be extremely helpful as a mentor. I'm excited to provide some suggestions on that this evening in our workshop. If you are here, if you're watching the live session, introduce yourself in the comments section. Would love to see who's here. Hey, Victoria. Hey, Raven. Hey, Gary. Thanks for introducing yourself. Thank you all for being here. This is this is a fun. I'm excited to interact with you all, especially in this crazy time period that we are in. It is officially 7 o'clock, so we are going to get started. I'm so excited to begin. So, hey, Suzanne, thanks for introducing yourself. So if you all have any questions during this workshop this evening, please post them in the comments section. I will answer them during this live session. That's the best part. That's the beauty of doing a live session, because it allows us to interact in person. It allows us, well, for the most part in person. You can ask me questions, I can answer them. We can work on how we can make this program as beneficial for you and your mentee as possible. Now, at this moment in time, obviously there's a lot of things going on with coronavirus. Maybe that means that you've had more conversations with your mentee. If so, fantastic. Maybe that means that your schedule's in flux, everyone's trying to figure things out. That's okay too. If you can try to schedule conversations with your mentee, that is awesome, especially with the scenario that we are in, with especially a lot of times if your mentee is looking at having an internship or a full-time job after graduation, or they are in a job, but they're kind of, they might be in flux. They may not necessarily know what's going to happen next. Helping them by asking them questions, helping them prioritize their own paths and helping them create a plan for themselves, and not just giving them the advice, but asking them questions to help them come up with their own plan of action, their own strategies. That is how you can be really helpful as a mentor. I mentioned this a moment ago, but you're not necessarily there to be their coach. You're there to be their mentor. And by being their mentor, that means you ask them questions. You are someone that they can trust, rely on, and empathize with, and you can empathize with them and build a strong rapport with them. So that is really how you can help them, especially in this really difficult time that we are in as a human society. So I'm excited. I mean, sometimes we can look at difficulties with a negative lens. I look at difficult times and points of inconvenience, discomfort as opportunities to grow, because I know that at any point in my life, anytime that I was uncomfortable, it always led to the greatest opportunity for growth for me. I believe that'll happen with you and with your mentee. We will overcome this. We will be stronger. We will be better. It just might take a little bit of time. So being there to support your mentee is one of the best ways you can go about being an awesome and amazing mentor. So let's dive in. During this workshop, it's going to be about 15 minutes of content and then about 5 minutes of Q&A. Unless there's more Q&A, I'm more than happy to answer as many questions as there are in the workshop to make this as effective and meaningful as possible. During this workshop, we will cover suggested questions that you can ask your mentee to help build a deeper relationship. So essentially, how can you get your mentee to open up more to you? Really, sometimes that is a big thing that I've observed with a lot of mentoring relationships. You're in the mentoring relationship and you feel like maybe your mentee is reserved, isn't fully sharing everything with you. I'm going to provide some suggestions, some questions, some strategies that you can go about using to help you get them to open up to you a little bit more. I'm also going to talk about how you can help your mentee with accountability and suggested questions you can provide them and get them to think about being more accountable with their lives and their careers, especially as a lot of them are taking classes online. I would imagine it can be very easy to get out of a routine and potentially get into a rut. How can you essentially helping your mentee with accountability? I'm going to provide some questions on how you can essentially get them thinking about how they can be more accountable about their lives and their professional careers and their professional paths. So that's one thing that we're also going to discuss during this workshop. And the last thing we're going to discuss is how you can help your mentee broaden their perspective. That's especially critical at this moment in time because they may think like, okay, I had this internship, I had this offer, and then it got pulled and the sky is falling and I don't know what's going to happen. And so what these sets of questions will do, especially on how to help someone broaden their perspective, they will help your mentee really think about their career path, their internship in a different way. And so hopefully these questions will equip you with how you can go about really making a strong and positive impact on your mentee. So there are 3 keys to successful mentorship. I've covered them in the previous 2 workshops, but they are your strategy, your story, and your state. I want to cover it again because it is so important to hone in on those 3 keys. To being a successful mentor, you have to hone in on your strategy, your story, and your state. Now, your state is the most important. Physically, how are you feeling? What is going on with your world? How are you physically preparing your body to be in a state conducive for being successful for your mentor meetings? I don't care if you've had a rough day. I don't care if things are really tough on you right now. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move around, you shake it out, you can change how you feel. Meaning that if you're going into a mentor meeting, if you're all stressed out and you got all this stuff that's weighing on you, and you don't get yourself into a state conducive for being successful, you're going to put that on them. And that's not a good thing. So what you can do is you can get yourself in a state conducive for being successful. So let's practice right now. If you all are working from home, hopefully you're at home right now. I want you to stand up and I want you to shake it out. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to stretch. I want you to get loose. Shake it out, stand up, get loose, get your blood flowing. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just let it out, let it loose, let it go. Get that blood moving. The reason why we're doing this is because by getting our blood moving, by getting our bodies moving, we're getting ourselves into a state conducive for being successful. We're getting our blood flowing to our brain, meaning that we're putting ourselves in a state conducive for receiving information. In fact, if you want to apply this, you might even try to do this before every mentor meeting with your mentee. Maybe if you're doing a video call, say, hey, I want to get ourselves into a state conducive for being successful. You stand up, I'll stand up. Let's shake it out. Let's get loose. That could be something that could be a really fun exercise, especially with us being cooped up inside our homes for God knows how long. If we can go about trying to get ourselves physically moving, that can get ourselves into a state conducive for being successful as a mentor and in a mentoring relationship, It also makes the information that we're sharing and receiving much more likely to be retained in our minds. The next key is your story. So what is the story you tell yourself for why you will or will not be successful? Whatever you tell yourself, you will manifest. If it's positive, it's going to be positive. If it's negative, it's going to be negative. Why? Self-fulfilling prophecies. We want to essentially believe the thing that we've told ourselves. So we tell ourselves why we will not be a good mentor, or why we're having a bad day, or why we're stressed out, and that's going to negatively impact our mentoring relationship. You want to know what? It's going to negatively impact your mentoring relationship. It's not all of a sudden going to be magically positive if you're telling yourself a negative story. On the flip side, if you come in thinking, you know what, I don't care what's going on in my world, I don't care if the sky is falling everywhere around me, I'm going to come in and make the most out of this experience because I'm going to be an amazing mentor to my mentee. And I'm going to focus for this next hour, this next 30 minutes, this next hour and a half, however long your mentor meetings are. I'm going to focus on my mentee and making the most out of this time. If you tell yourself that, you are much more likely to actually accomplish that. You're telling yourself a story for why you're going to be successful. So actually, what I'd love for you to do, if you don't mind, share in the comment section, what makes you a successful mentor? How do you plan on helping your mentee best, especially in this difficult time that we are in? How do you plan on helping your mentee best? What are questions that you would like to ask your mentee? Post them in the comment section. I would love to learn about them. I love for you to share. And the reason why sharing is so important and interacting in this workshop is so important, especially during the live stream, is that it shows and gives guidance, gives insight to the other mentors that are watching this video about how they could go about being an amazing mentor too. So share it in the comment section. I would love to learn about that. So I'm going to take a quick moment. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to look at the comment section and see what questions we've got so far. All righty. Hey, Felicia, thanks for introducing yourself. Post your questions in the comment section if you have them. I'm going to jump back into strategy, story, and state. So the last key is your strategy. What are the strategies that you can implement to help you be a better mentor, be the best possible mentor you can possibly be? And that is what we're going to cover today. That is how you can, we're going to cover strategies on how you can help build a deeper relationship with your mentee, really how you can help get them to open up to you. Then we're going to talk about how you can help your mentee with accountability and suggested questions you can get them thinking about accountability. And then lastly, how you can help them broaden their perspective. So let's dive right in. So let's talk about building a deeper relationship with your mentee. This is a very cool strategy because so often, especially if we've already had a meeting or two or three, that sometimes we may have skipped this step. We may have just started talking about ourselves, and then maybe you didn't get the full background about who your mentee is. One question I love to ask is, tell me your story starting with kindergarten. This may seem like a lot of detail. It may seem like kindergarten, that was forever ago. But what I'm here to tell you is that that is really, for a person being able to share that story, it is empowering. It feels amazing. It feels like this is a story that you don't normally share with everybody. Typically, people share their story starting with college or starting with maybe their senior year of high school. They don't go all the way back to kindergarten. I think that's so critical because it kind of gives you a basis and a baseline for who they are. Maybe something they faced and overcame as a child. And a lot of times they'll share the obstacles they faced. And it's a really empowering thing to do because that's where people can start to open up to you. That's where they can start sharing their vulnerabilities, their mistakes, their missteps, the things that they had messed up on, because it's so far in the past that they're cool and they're comfortable with saying, you know what, this happened to me and I messed up, but this is what I learned from it. And that will be so helpful for you because it helps give you context into who they are, but it also helps you start building rapport with them. It starts to help you understand where maybe they might not have fully opened up to you so far yet. It helps them feel comfortable opening up to you. So tell me your story starting with kindergarten. That's a great question I like to ask to get someone to open up into their personal goals and drives. The question I like to ask after that is, what is your dream career and how do you plan on getting there? Now, this may seem like a wishy-washy question. It's not. It's actually extremely relevant, especially after they've shared with you what their story is starting with kindergarten, because so often we tend to share our dream goals or dream careers based on what we think other people want to hear. And typically it's not after sharing our past. See, when we share our past, it's a lot more honest. It's a lot more authentic. It's a lot more real because it ultimately shares the things that have happened. You can't really fudge what happened versus what didn't happen. So when you share your past first, you're much more likely to get them to be more honest with you about where they actually want to be going. Without asking about the past, talking about the future can be easy to fudge. It can be easy to BS. It can be easy to try to assimilate what we think the other person wants to hear when it comes to our dream careers. And so once we've learned their past, they're much more likely to be honest and open with us about what their dream career is. And by the way, it's okay if they don't know. You can then rephrase that question to say, what would you love to do? What would you love to get paid to do? What kind of impact would you like to make? And just ultimately, what do you think would be really interesting to you? That would be make you constantly curious every single day coming to work to learn something new. What would be that for you? That's a great question to ask if they don't know what their dream career is. And then once they've identified, well, I'm genuinely curious into XYZ topic. I think that's really interesting to me. And by the way, there's no wrong answer to that question. You can then ask, how do you plan on getting there? And you can start to help them lay out a plan of what steps they can take to help them get to where they want to be. And no dream, no goal, no aspiration is unrealistic. Sometimes I'll hear people give me a really big, hairy, audacious goal, and they'll say to me, you know what, but it's not realistic. I'll probably settle for doing this other thing. I want you as the mentor to challenge them. If they really have a goal that's aspirational, that's big, that's hairy, that's amazing, that's audacious, challenge them to go for it. Don't bring up the negative, especially if they think they're trying to be quote unquote realistic. Don't let that hold them back from accomplishing the things that they want to do, because ultimately, if they don't ever try it, they will constantly be living with regret with the fact that they never gave it a shot. So believe in them, inspire them, be willing to help them lay out a plan for how they can achieve their dream, big, hairy, amazing, audacious goal. Now, the last question I like to ask is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, this is a question most students have not really thought about. Like maybe they thought about what might happen immediately after graduation or where they might want to move. But 5 years is pretty far out for a lot of them. But I love to ask that question because it gets them thinking. It gets them thinking, well, shoot, by that point in time in my life, I'll be a couple years into my career. I don't know where I want to be. What do I want to have accomplished? Do I want to have been working up the promotional track and working up some ladder? Do I want to be focused on my family and doing things that I think is meaningful to me outside of work? Do I want to be pursuing work that I'm really passionate about and that ultimately helps me fulfill my personal missions? Whatever it may be, there's not a wrong answer, but it helps get them thinking about it. And it might take some coaxing. It may take you going up to them and pulling it out of them. But ask them, where do they want to be in 5 years? It's a great question to help them think about where they want to go. Because if you ask them to tell a story about a time, the next part about helping them open up to you is asking them to tell you a story about a time that they really wanted something and they ended up realizing they didn't really want it that much, but they actually wanted something else. Regardless of whether or not they got it, what did they learn from it? So the question is, tell me a story about a time that you really wanted something. You ended up not getting it. What did you learn from that? That is a great question to ask. That is a great, I guess, kind of story to ask your mentee, because it helps you get a lens into them being humble. Because so often we want to share the things that we, hey, I set a goal to do this. I ended up getting this. Look at me, how amazing I am. Rarely we share, hey, I set a goal that I wanted to do this and I didn't end up getting it, but this is what I learned from it. That is such a powerful story. That is how you can start building rapport with your mentee. That is how you can get them to start opening up to you about a lot of the things that they are facing, because it gets them thinking to themselves, it's okay to share my failures. It's okay to share my mistakes. It's okay to share the times that I didn't actually get what I wanted to get. And it's a great question to ask. So ideally, after they've shared with you, or if they're struggling to share with you, they're saying, hey, every goal that I've ever set in my life, I've accomplished, which by the way is BS and you know it. If it takes you coaxing them out of that by sharing a story of your own, I would encourage you to do that. I'd encourage you to say, hey, you know what? When I was this age, I really wanted this. I ended up not getting it, but this is what I learned from it. I think that can help spark a conversation about that. So the point is that these questions can get your mentee to open up and get out of their facade that everything has to be perfect. Sometimes we want to look perfect to our mentors, that we're doing amazing, that everything's awesome. In reality, that's not always the case, especially in difficult times like we're in right now. helping them be comfortable opening up to you is so critical. So I'm going to take a moment, look at the comment section, see if there are any questions so far. Then we're going to jump into my suggested questions on accountability and helping someone broaden their perspective. So we had a question sent by a mentor. Do you think we could receive additional guidance on how to support our mentees during this time of the pandemic? Yeah, so really, I mean, obviously so that's a great question that was brought up. And I think we're covering a little bit of it. I think the big part is, as the mentor, you are here to provide guidance. You are here to support them as someone is working towards their professional goals or professional outcomes. They're in a difficult time period though. Empathizing with them is the most critical thing. Not just saying, hey, you need to be doing this, this, and this, but asking them questions to help them get there is so critical. So I provided a few suggestions of questions that can be asked. I think that can really help opening it up, because at the end of the day, as a mentor, the best and the juiciest, the most amazing conversations happen when vulnerability exists, because you cannot have trust without vulnerability. So the questions I suggested on helping your mentee open up to you can help them feel comfortable being vulnerable with you, and vice versa. You should be comfortable sharing stories with them about times that you've made mistakes, because that helps you be vulnerable with them and it helps them trust you more often. It's a great exercise in building trust and connection, and I really strongly encourage that you ask those questions to help build that, because I believe the best way you can support a mentee at this time right now is not to hand them a job or an internship, but it's to get them to think critically on how they can amplify their own situation and really improve yourself and your life. So another question was, what if you can't get a hold of your mentee anymore? You had 2 great meetings and then no more communication. That's a great question. So just follow up with us, send us an email. We can work on trying to build that bond. I know that this is a very difficult time for mentees. So they are for most schools, they are sent home. So I know a lot of mentees may not have broadband and internet at their homes. That's a distinct possibility. Keep following up with them, keep sending them emails. If you've got their phone number, send them a text message. Find out ways that you can work on connecting with them, because this is a difficult time. And I understand that not everybody has internet at their home. And so if that is the case with your mentee, recognize your emails may not be coming through. So alternative modes of communication may be necessary to continue building that bond and that rapport and that connection. So send them text messages, give them a voicemail. Whatever you can do, keep working on them, because right now is when they need your support and your help the most. So yeah, that's a great question. Hey, Amanda, thanks for introducing yourself. So let's go over a few questions that I love to ask a mentee to help them with accountability, especially in this point in time right now. If they've lost an internship, or if they had a part-time job, but then all of a sudden they don't have it anymore, or if just things did not go the way that they thought they would go, which is very likely at this point in time right now as with our society, helping a mentee be accountable is so critical. So here are 5 questions I love to ask to help a mentee become more accountable of their situation, because right now it's very easy to play the blame game. Right now it's very easy to blame others or our circumstances or just a lack of resources, or just it's easy to blame other things outside of our control as to why we are not in a position of comfort or in a position that we thought we would be in. This will help them be more accountable of that, because ultimately I have experienced that it's your ability to be resourceful that allows you to be successful, that allows you to break through. And as a mentee and as a mentor, you can help your mentee be resourceful by asking them these questions. So the first question is, when have you persisted and had it paid off for you? Now, that's a great question to ask, because it gets them to think positively. It gets them to think about a time that they worked hard, that they persisted through something that was difficult and had it pay off for them. It's a great question, because ultimately it gets them thinking positively and starts to associate what they can accomplish with success in times that they have personally overcome something. The second question is, what specific actions do you need to take to meet your goal? Now, this gets them to create an action plan for themselves, as opposed to blaming other people or blaming other things or blaming their circumstances or blaming a lack of resources for why they're in the situation they're in. You now get them to think about what they can do right now to start meeting their goal. And that's where you can really help brainstorm with them. You can help them write it down on a piece of paper and say, okay, well, if this doesn't work, why don't you try this? If that doesn't work, why don't you try this? Here's a list of 10, 15, 20 things you can try to try to be successful and achieve the goal that you've set for yourself. And until you've tried all 20 and tell me that they do not work, then we can rediscuss more strategies and ideas. But identifying what specific actions is so critical, because then it gives them an action plan for what they actually can do. But this is something you should create with your mentee. You should not tell them this is what you need to do, A, B, C, D. It should be, hey, what do you think you should do? What are the specific actions you think you need to take to get there? Gets them thinking about it and creating their own action plan for themselves. The third question is, who can help you be accountable? This is a great question. Now, you as their mentor, you might be that person potentially, but I want you to help them to get to start thinking about who else can be that person to help them hold them accountable. That's so critical, because what it does is we know that when you share your goals with other people, your likelihood of accomplishing them is much greater, because you can lie to yourself. You can tell yourself, I'll change my goals because I didn't tell anybody. I'm not technically a failure, or I technically didn't wind up short. But if you tell other people the goals that you set for yourself, they're going to hold you accountable. You are much more likely to want to achieve those goals because you want to live up to the goals that you set for somebody else in their mind of what you can accomplish. So asking them who can help you be accountable is a great question to get them thinking about that. The fourth question is, what systems can you put in place to help you follow through? This is a great question to ask, because by asking them to put in systems, not only do they have a person that's holding them accountable, but there's checks and balances. So if they don't accomplish these goals that they've set with you, they've created their own punishments for essentially what they're gonna have to pay for because they didn't accomplish it. And this isn't that they didn't land the internship. This could be something even on a more minute level. So maybe they give themselves a reward for accomplishing their goals, or they give themselves a punishment for not accomplishing their goals. Maybe you say, hey, if you are not able to accomplish your goals by this date and time, maybe you don't watch Netflix for the next 2 days. I don't know, especially with a lot of time being spent at home. I would imagine a lot of college students are watching a lot of Netflix. I don't know. You can help them come up with whatever systems they need to put in place to help them follow through, but make sure that they come up with it on their own, and make sure they come up with something that helps them hold them to following through on the things that they said they would do. And then the last question I love to ask is, what are the costs/rewards of and of not following through with your commitments? This gets them to think broadly, because ultimately, if they don't land that internship, what happens? Well, they don't have that experience to put on their resume. If they don't have that experience to put on their resume, if they don't build their network from having that internship, if they don't get the learning, knowledge, and experience of having that internship, what happens? Maybe it's a little bit more difficult for them to land a job. Maybe they're not able to achieve the salary that they would have desired to achieve after graduation. Maybe they're not able to do the type of work that they wanted to do because they didn't have that experience on their resume. Or maybe they end up pursuing a job that's not in the area that they want to pursue because they didn't have that internship to tell them that they hated that experience. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's up to them to identify that, and asking them, what are the costs and rewards of and of not following through on your commitments is so critical, because it gets them thinking, okay, wow, this could be bad. And as the mentor, you can help them think about the further things, because sometimes students can be short-sighted. Sometimes mentees can think like, I'm only thinking about this internship and this summer. I'm not even thinking about the job or 2 years from now. Screw that, because this can impact the rest of their life, and it can create a domino effect. Help them realize that this is serious. And so helping them hold them accountable to whatever goals they've set for themselves is so critical, because like I said, this is a very difficult time. It is understandable that things can change, plans can change, that happens. But as a mentor, if you can be there for them to help them iterate, pivot, and find a new plan for themselves, you can really help make an impact in their world and help them take the steps they need to take to getting the opportunities that they really desire and they need. So the next set of questions I like to ask is, there are 6 questions I like to ask to help a mentee broaden their perspective, especially with right now being in the situation that we're in. Some mentees may have thought, this internship was the end all be all. I only wanted to do this. I got the rug pulled out from underneath me. Now I don't know what to do. How can you help them broaden their perspective? Maybe it's to land a part-time job. Maybe it's to land an unpaid internship. Maybe it's to land another a volunteer experience, or any other experience that can help them, give them the experience that really helps equip them for their next step in their life and in their career. So helping them broaden their perspective is so critical. I like to ask 6 questions because here's the thing, and back to the whole point before, if you're sitting there just giving them the advice and say, hey, you need to broaden your perspective, that's not going to resonate that well. But if you ask them questions that get them thinking about it, it's much more likely to actually stick because they came up with the idea. So the first question is, what will this situation look like to you in 10 years? Now, that may sound like a crazy question for them. It might seem like a light years away, but 10 years is not that far. What will your situation look like in 10 years? Gets them to think about, well, shoot, where do I want to be? What does this situation look like in 10 years? Will this thing that's happening right now really end my world in 10 years? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really know. But it helps them think about really where this fits in the grand scheme of things in 10 years. Second question is, what are you willing to try that is different? This is a great question to ask because it allows them to start making pattern adjustments. So I almost like to think about it as on an airplane. If you're a pilot on an airplane and you're flying to a certain location, if you change your trajectory by even 1 degree, that could mean the difference between you ending up in a completely different location. So putting it in other words, if you can help your mentee try something that's different, a positive habit that might seem like a small thing right now, but ultimately could alter the trajectory of their entire life, that could be an amazing thing. I could give an example of, let's say, your physical health. If you say to your mentee, like, hey, one thing you're struggling with is just getting your body into a physical state conducive for being successful and just keeping in shape, especially now that they have to be home all the time. Maybe say, hey, do 20 push-ups every single day. It might take them 1 minute to do every single day. It might seem like a small thing, but if they do that every single day for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, that could mean a huge difference for their physical health versus not doing any push-ups at all for any point in time in their life. And so small changes can help them do that. So asking them what are they willing to try that is different can mean a huge difference, especially if it becomes a habit that they continually do over and over and over again. The third question is, who do you respect and how might he or she approach this situation you are facing? It's a great question because it helps them think about a paradigm for success. It helps them think about a role model. Role models are so critical because it allows people to realize what is possible. I believe it was Roger Bannister who broke the 4-minute mile. Beforehand, nobody had broken the 4-minute mile. And then after he did it, 17 people did it within the next 6 months. The point is that if you are able to see a role model, if you're thinking to yourself, who do I respect and how might he or she approach this situation I'm facing, it will help your mentee realize that this is possible to overcome, that nothing's impossible, and that there's somebody who can achieve it. You know what? If they can achieve it, so can I. The fourth question is, what is your attitude about this situation? Is it helping or hurting you? This is a great question to ask because if your mentee thinks to themselves, to him or herself, man, the world is falling, the sky is falling, everything's horrible, it's going to manifest itself in the outcomes that they achieve because ultimately that's the story they're telling themselves. Now you can't say, hey, you need to turn this around, you need to change your attitude, but you can ask them, what is your attitude about this situation? Is it helping or hurting you? Let them admit, hey, you know what, this is probably hurting me. This attitude is probably not serving me. Let them determine that for themselves as opposed to you telling them they need to change their attitude. The fifth question is, what is one of your greatest strengths and how can it serve you in this situation? This is a great question to ask because it allows them to build themselves up. Mentors see something in somebody that they didn't see in themselves. So rather, put that another way, mentors see something in a person that maybe that person doesn't see in themselves. So asking them for their greatest strengths and then harping on that, reinforcing that, saying, hey, you got this strength. You can do it. And this can serve you in this situation in so many different ways that empowers your mentee to overcome and realize they can do it, even if it means that it wasn't the way that they thought it would go. So maybe they thought they would land that one internship. Maybe they got the rug pulled out from underneath them. Their strength might be that they're resilient, that they're ingenuitive, and that they are engaged. And you know what? If that's the case, that's amazing. That can help them reinforce that they can accomplish their goals and get new experience that can help them make the most out of this summer. Now, the sixth question I like to ask is, what makes you curious about this issue? This is a great question to ask because it gets them to think why they're doing this. Like, why am I interested in this path anyways? What makes me curious about this? That curiosity question is such a great question because it gets them to think deeper about the topic and why they can do this and why this can be possible for them, and really it can help them come up with different strategies about how they can make the most out of this circumstance. So that is the end of our workshop. I know I just chocked this full of a ton of content, a ton of ideas. I'm going to post these suggested questions in the description for this video. But if you have any questions, please post them in the comments section. This was amazing. As the mentors, thank you. You are doing amazing work. You are really helping make an impact on so many different people's lives, and I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful for you. Seriously, your work, your efforts being a mentor are not going unnoticed. It can truly, especially in a difficult time like we're in, mean the difference in a person's life. This could be a lifetime relationship that you're facilitating. This could be, even if it's not a lifetime relationship, that doesn't mean it's a failure. What advice you're giving, the questions that you're asking, the insight you're giving could turn the corner for these mentees. And you may not necessarily know what piece of advice or a question that you asked really stuck out to them, but so often I'll hear from people 2, 3, 4, 5 years later that'll say, man, that thing that you taught me or that thing that you asked me that got me thinking critically about it changed my life. You never know what it will be, but the fact that you're here for these mentees is it's all that matters. So thank you. Seriously, thank you all for being here. I'm so excited for you to continue your relationship with your mentees. If you've got any questions, if you've got any concerns about anything at all, please send an email to support@ambition-in-motion.com and we will answer your questions. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And be safe, be healthy, and enjoy yourselves. Enjoy yourselves even in this difficult time.